welcome to the Gridiron Show. And, well, if you tuned in and listened last week and heard our hour of positivity around the AFC, well, this week it's the turn of the NFC. We're going to go through all 16 teams and tell the fans the one thing they have to be optimistic about going into the 2022 season. I'm Gavin, and joined this week by the returning Simon Clancy. How are we doing, sir?
Very good. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Glad to have you back. I know you've been incredibly busy as of late, but you missed out on your chance to be positive about the Dolphins last week, so I'm just going to give you a little 20, 30 seconds to tell us why you're excited about the season.
God, now you put me on the spot. I mean, your friends, speed kills Mostert, Waddle, Hill, Tua, the genius that is Mike McDaniel, a really good defense, especially that defensive line. So I suspect we'll finish 4-12 and we'll have an early draft. Oh no, that's not true because Stephen Ross obviously lost that for us. So yeah. Positivity is back.
Started off really nice and positive. I enjoyed it greatly. To give the balance, the counteracting to Simon's pessimism, the man who is the king of positivity when it comes to the Gridiron Show, and another return. Absolutely delighted to have back on the show my old mucker, Ollie Hunter. How are we doing, brother?
I'm all right. I'm sunburnt. I've already told Simon this, but I played football yesterday, 90 minutes, and I'm a man not blessed with much hair on the top of my head. And the sun has burnt me through the clouds. So I have a very red top of my head.
It's the inverse of, I forget which golfer it was, but did you see there was somebody who was on, I think it was actually on the Live Tour, and he took the hat off and he had this perfect white rim where he'd caught the sun from the cap down. You're the antithesis of that. That is sensational.
I'm the absolute opposite. So I've been putting after sun on my head every 30 minutes, and a little trick: after sun in the fridge. Oh my god, it's wonderful.
Sensational. It would have been really useful before either of the heat waves we've just had, but
well, I got burnt yesterday, so
one for next summer.
I think it's one for the winter for you, Ginger Man.
There you go. Social media Mike, we've got our clip for the week. Ollie taking his hat off, so we almost don't have to bother with the rest of the show.
Did he have a Chiefs helmet on, or was that just his head? I couldn't work it
out. Right, let's get into it. We're going to run down the divisions, work our way through them, pick out each team and give something for them to be positive about. And we've been given a running order. I'm going to mix things up slightly, just because I don't want to finish on the NFC East. So instead, I'm going to start on the NFC East and kind of get this division a little bit out the way early. Simon, I'm going to come to you first. The Dallas Cowboys, something to be positive for 2022.
For me, the positivity is that Sean Payton is no longer a New Orleans Saint, and therefore will soon be jettisoned into Frisco to hopefully breathe some life into a really average skill position group, actually. So to me, that's the positivity, the kind of culmination of the Mike McCarthy era and the long overdue rebirth or birth of the Sean Payton in Dallas era.
So what you're saying, Simon, is the positivity is that they've only got one more year of mediocrity in
like
Mike McCarthy. That's it. So there's no real positivity this season. It's just waiting for next season.
Well, except depends how it starts, Ollie. If they go 0-4, you just never know. Sean Payton sat there on the Fox set. He could be helicoptered in to Arlington and away we go.
I quite like that. I haven't heard anyone else come up with Sean Payton might just come in and rescue the season in any case. That's amazing. I love that.
Human rescue package.
Do you think there's a chance he comes out during the season then? I know,
for the right job, I suspect he would. And I think Dallas is absolutely the right job. I think that the two are pretty much a marriage made in heaven. And you're looking at a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who has still got plenty of years left. Working with a guy like Sean Payton, everything that he did for Drew Brees, I think it would be a pretty showbiz fit. And I think that's Jerry Jones, Dak Prescott, Sean Payton as a triumvirate. What could go wrong?
Is there any worry though that Dak Prescott's drop off after his injury last year kind of continues into this season, along with, as you said, I know we're trying to be positive here, but a slightly lacking skill position offense.
I think that's part of it. You do worry about the skill positions. Obviously, losing Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup injured with a foot injury. is this the last year of Ezekiel Elliott? But I think, there are young guys on the roster. The offensive line is not what it was. The running game is not what it was. But, guys like Tony Pollard, Dalton Schultz, guys like that, I think will be integral and important moving forwards for Prescott. I think you are looking at a quarterback like Dak who almost has to raise the level of the players around him as much as anything else. He's got that ability to do that. So yeah, I think Peyton in Dallas makes absolutely perfect sense, and I think that will be the future.
It's astonishing that we're talking about a team that were 12-5, probably should have won in the first round of the playoffs and gone at least to the divisional round last year with some exciting young players on defense, and yet now they look like they are opening up a hole for a team to come from beneath and overtake them. And that's why I will take up my first point of positivity for the Philadelphia Eagles, who are going to win the NFC East this year. That's what you have to be positive about this year. Wow. I'm absolutely convinced of it.
I agree. When you look at, they've got to come up against the Giants and the Commanders, who, isn't it weird, by the way, calling them the Commanders? For so many years, I've just called them Washington or Washington Football Club and not the other name. And now we've got actually something to call them the Commanders. But you've got those two teams which are rubbish. The Cowboys, who aren't very good. But the Eagles, when they've brought in A.J. Brown, who could be brilliant for them and for everybody else on that roster, Devontae Smith there and Jalen Hurts as well, a decent running back. And that defense is absolutely loaded. I don't care what you say, Simon. They are loaded, and I love the look of the Eagles. Plus, #KitWatch, they've got new black uniforms and a black helmet as well. Love it.
Yeah, See, my point of positivity was similar, actually, and I've done this alphabetically.
The uniforms,
division by division. No, more that similar to Dallas in that the point of positivity is C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Tyler Van Dyke, Will Levis. In terms of, I like Jalen Hurts as a leader, but I think he's a backup quarterback, and I don't see the consistency that would convince me to invest heavily at the end of this season when his contract runs out. I think that, the positivity for Philadelphia is that there are lots of interesting, good, solid pieces in place. And you mentioned some of them on offense in terms of Brown and Devonta Smith, and can they get a tune out of Jalen Reagor and Miles Sanders and Dallas Goedert? And defensively, there's a lot of really good players, and they added to them with guys like Nakobe Dean. You've got a premier cover corner, one of the most underrated players in the league in Darius Slay, but I just don't think they have the quarterback that can take them to the promised land. And so for me, the positivity is, what looks like at the moment, an incredibly stacked draft class for 2023 in terms of quarterbacks.
Yeah, what you do have, and this is being kind of part of the big point, is that you have done everything to make sure you know whether that's true or not about Jalen Hurts. There's an offensive line there. There's a running game that, in theory, both from a talent perspective and he led the league in rushing yards last year for a quarterback. He's definitely got that dual threat. I think they will. The problem is that within their division, I think that they'll end up winning 4 or 5 out of 6 games, which is going to be enough to win their division when they win another 4 or 5 out of it, probably. That's why I say I think they're going to win the division this year. They are set up to see whether or not Jalen Hurts is the future, but they have also given themselves draft picks going forward to make sure that if they need to move up, if they need to find their guy next year, if it is going to be 3-4 quarterbacks available in that draft, they can go and get their guy if they need to.
Yeah. And the thing on their side, division-wise, is that they're going up against the NFC North and the AFC South. So there are 4 teams in both of those divisions that are vying for the number 1 picks in the Jags, Texans, Bears, and Lions. So that's another 4 wins. So there's wins to be had all over the place for this team, and then pick up some wins elsewhere against maybe the Cowboys or the Packers or whoever, the Saints. The Eagles are looking good this year.
Yeah, I think they're in great shape in a lot of positions. You look at the tackles with, another hugely underrated player, Jordan Mailata, who's one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Got Lane Johnson, obviously. They drafted Landon Dickerson last year, who's a really good guard. Cam Jurgens, is he going to play centre? Where's Kelsey going to play? Is Kelsey going to stay at centre? You look at the game last night that Philly had Cam Jurgens on his very first snap, comes out, pulls, absolutely pancakes a Cleveland defender. The bench goes wild. Running back, with Kenneth Gainwell and Kennedy Brooks, the kid from Oklahoma, and receiver we've talked about. Defensively, Hassan Reddick is there, and your Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis and Brandon Graham and Javon Hargrave and Milton Williams. So that they're stacked. I just don't think the quarterback is good enough to take them where they want to go.
All right. This is the reason we did this division first, because there is some negativity here, and maybe by the sounds of it, based on what Ollie's saying,
negativity.
is that the NFC North is where we next need to focus on, so we really get these ones out of the way. But two teams here, I feel like there is more reasons to potentially be positive. The Giants, maybe it's a make or break year. Can we see them? Daboll feels like after they've gone one and done already, it's a guy who's going to get a couple of years to rebuild here. Another team who need to find out what they've got at quarterback, whether or not he is the long-term option or not. But some really exciting young talent coming in, particularly through the draft. There's, for the New York Giants, for a team who are in rebuilding mode, it feels like they've had an off-season where they've made the right moves, at least, Simon.
Yeah, I think for me, the point of positivity is, look, what can Brian Daboll do with Daniel Jones? Because this is now a scheme fit that suits his style of play. He's finally going to get great protection. Andrew Thomas, obviously, now developing him into one of the best left tackles in the league. Evan Neal, obviously, on the other side. So what can he do? He does have talent. Did he ever have the full trust of the coaching staff? Did he ever have, that constant rotation of offensive coordinators? Aaron Rodgers would struggle with Jason Garrett as his offensive coordinator. And I think, and I'm not saying his upward trend is going to be anything close to Josh Allen's, but you look at his first 38 games and compare them with Josh Allen's. Josh was a 60% completion percentage quarterback. He averaged 249 yards, total yards per game, 51 touchdowns, 29 picks. Daniel Jones is 3% better in terms of his completion percentage at 63%. He's averaging 247 total yards per game, so 2 less, 45 scores, so 6 less, 29 picks the same. Now Josh Allen is, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, and I'm not saying that's where Daniel Jones can go, but with a competent play caller, with a guy that trusts him. You heard Daboll yesterday say, I love Daniel. I love the kid. He really works hard. What can he do? I think it's a really interesting, and it's kind of a do or die situation for Jones. It's kind of shit or bust, as it were. We talked about the quarterbacks coming out in the draft next year. What can he do in this offense? Because I don't think there's an offense that's built anywhere else in the league that better suits what Daniel Jones does in terms of his skill set.
And with Daboll turning around Josh Allen pretty much in one season, and him coming out and being an incredible player and doing what he did the last 2, you could potentially see that happening with Daniel Jones as well. They've got a really good receiving core, which really failed last year, but that could be down to, as Simon said, the whole Jason Garrett experience. So the thing I'm really positive about on a Giants point of view is what I've seen from Saquon Barkley. He's a year over that horrible knee injury. And some of the clips, I know it's preseason, but some of the clips I've seen of him running over people and juking and doing this and that, I think it's good for Daniel Jones to have a guy who is a really, really good running back and sort of fresh, because he hasn't had much football the last 2 years. So I'm positive for Saquon Barkley coming back and having a good season for the Giants.
The big positive for the Washington Commanders is that Carson Wentz's deal is only a year long, and they can cut him with no dead cap.
Right onto the NFC North.
Anyone
want to give me anything more positive for Washington to get excited about?
For me, I think is a youth movement on offense. You've had Sam Howell taking first team snaps. I think Sam Howell's a competent, at worst, starter in this league, and I think that will play out. You got Brian Robinson winning the starting running back job over Antonio Gibson, 4th round pick. Obviously, Terry McLaurin signed his contract. You have Jahan Dotson going the 1st round. You have Diami Brown, the deep speedster from North Carolina. Cole Turner might have been the best player in training camp, but the rookie tight end out of Nevada until he strained his hamstring last week. To me, this youth movement, the skill positions, it is something that's going to move them forwards. Like you say, year of Carson Wentz, but you've got the big 226-pounder out of Alabama running the ball. You've got your 3-4 deep at receiver. You've got Logan Thomas coming back at tight end. I know he's not part of that youth movement, but Logan Thomas, Cole Turner, Sam Howell can move the pocket with his feet. He's a great runner. He scored a great touchdown running the ball in one of the preseason games. Like I said, he started taking first team snaps. I think Carson Wentz has improved through training camp. But to me, I think there's reasons to be cheerful in terms of that. These young players, I don't think Ron Rivera necessarily will be the guy that ends up taking them forwards because I don't necessarily see their record as being something that Daniel Snyder believes is good enough for the 2023 season. But I think there are youngsters in place where the future looks a little bit brighter in the capital.
You ruined my gag answer by giving a very sensible, genuine reason to be positive. I think I should thank you for making the quality of the podcast higher, even if I will need to pick up my remains from underneath this bus. Let's move on to the NFC North then. Okay, he's on the call. He's wearing his jersey. He's got his little Packers bobblehead thing in the background as well. So come on, Ollie. Why are the Packers finally going to get over the hump this year?
I don't think they will.
Oh, God. All right, Simon's a more positive Packers fan than you are.
Yeah, I know, and he's only a secondary Packers fan. Bakhtiari's back. That's the main thing. That he was off the pup list. Absolutely needed for that offensive line. The offensive line, which has lost pieces, and
is Jenkins off as well?
No, Jenkins is there as well.
Back at right tackle, isn't he, Elton Jenkins?
Exciting. That is exciting if they're both healthy.
So if Bakhtiari is back and playing, because he's been out for almost 2 years now, that's huge. And if the offensive line's working, then you can really trust Aaron Rodgers, you'd hope, to get a tune out of this young group of receivers. And Romeo Doubs is looking great so far in practice and in preseason. And that's something that could happen. We want him or Walton or someone just to come up and claim that number one spot, because Devontae Adams is a huge loss leaving. However, Devontae Adams was part of the offense that only scored 10 points at home in a playoff game at Lambeau for us not to advance. And so I'm not saying that he's the problem, but him going could be good for everybody else, because all the focus isn't on Devontae Adams anymore.
To me, that's no force. That's what I'd written. No Devontae Adams. I think, as great as he is, this means less reliance on the best wide receiver in football. And in many ways, I think it diversifies and it opens up the Packers' offense. And you go back to that 49ers game where, and it's much talked about. Rodgers has talked about it himself. On that huge third down play, back end of the game, he threw to Devontae Adams deep down the field into triple coverage and fell incomplete when he had Alan Lazard running over. Alan Lazard would still be running now if that throw had gone to him. So I think what it does, the young guys will have to step up. You'll see more diversity. I think you're going to see Aaron Jones and Thunder Thighs with sort of 55 plus catches this season. I think
AJ Dillon.
I think the defense is absolutely loaded. And I think, like you said, if you can get a tune out of Romeo Doubs, who's been one of the stars of camp across the NFL, Christian Watson, I know he's had the surgery, but it's he's starting to come back doing individual work. Amari Rodgers is slimmed down, looks a much better player. Samori Touré's played well. I think look out for this Green Bay team, because I just think that over-reliance on Adams, as great as he was, I think it made them a bit too stale. And now I think, in a way, it re-energizes Aaron Rodgers, that he's got these kids that he can, pass on to the next generation, because all of a sudden Jordan Love begins to look like a player that, okay, pre-season, he's had a couple of really good games, had a very strong camp, looks like he's getting it. And, there's a baton to be passed with these young guys coming up. And to me, having no Devontae Adams, I think a lot of Green Bay fans will feel like, we're going to struggle. I see it as the opposite way.
And it could be great for Rodgers, for him to have gone, because now Rodgers is undisputably the number one man. And if he gets a tune out of it, it plays to his ego even further, doesn't it? He is the guy. He's the guy that got this ragtag bunch of non-first rounders to the Super Bowl and maybe win it. I mean, oh my God, Simon, you've got me pumped for this. Come on.
You're both ignoring. You're both ignoring the most important thing that happened to the Green Bay Packers this offseason, and highlighted to me by the opening play of the first preseason game with San Francisco, which was a 10-yard penalty on the special teams unit, because they now have Rich Bisaccia. They now have a special teams coordinator who knows what he's doing, who proved himself to do a decent job of being a head coach in Las Vegas as well. And that's been such a huge issue for them. It's cost them games left, right, and centre. If the special teams is league average, they have enough everywhere else to be a very successful team.
100%.
That's all they need from them.
Like retaining Adam Stinovich there, who was then the offensive line coach, has now moved to offensive coordinator. It was absolutely huge. You look at what they've done with their linemen. Ollie talked about Bakhtiari, but Josh Nijman filled in last year and played at a really solid level. You've got obviously Elton Jenkins, one of the best young players at any position coming back, played left guard, could play right tackle. the kids they drafted, Zach Tom, the kid out of Wake Forest, was a left tackle at Wake, could play centres, played all over the lines, taking first team reps, inside, outside. Josh Myers is coming back from injury. Royce Newman has started. John Runyon has played well. Sean Ryan, the kid they got out of UCLA, they've moved to guard, but he was a left tackle in the Pac-10. Rasheed Walker at Penn. I mean, the good players on the offensive, whoever's scouting offensive line for the Green Bay Packers is doing a hell of a job, and that's historical as well.
Let's talk the Minnesota Vikings, who I was looking through the last year's record for so many of these teams and realised that, considering how I feel about them today, the number of them that hit 7 wins, 8 wins, were in and around 500 was kind of a real testament to how that's quite doable in the NFL. Like these teams who have got win totals of 4.5 and 3.5 as their lines with the betting companies. There is, I understand, a positivity and change, new head coach, new GM, things are changing there. I look at the roster, it looks weaker than last year to me. And, okay, they needed to refresh on defense. They've done that. They've got a very young and exciting safety. But this feels like this is a year where you want to take the positivity from the looking to the future rather than what you've got for this year. Is that fair, Simon?
For me, the reason to be positive for the Vikings, and I think the end of the Mike Zimmer era is not before time to me. And some fans listening and watching this will kind of be like, "What's he on about?" Yeah, again. But to me, it's Kirk Cousins. He's the quarterback equivalent of a sort of a dad joke. He gets no national love. I think fans generally around the league think he sucks. Yeah, he can be prone to the occasional back-breaking error. But look, last year he threw for 4,221 yards, 33 touchdowns, just 7 picks, 103.1 passer rating. Over the last 2 years, out of the 61 qualifying quarterbacks, he's the only one to rank in the top 10 for yards per attempt, EPA per attempt, and accuracy. He's got really good players at the skill positions in terms of Adam Thielen. Justin Jefferson is ready to step up to be, potentially take the crown from Devontae Adams as the best receiver in the NFL. Dalvin Cook is still there. I don't think any team should wish away a top 10, top 12 quarterback, which is probably what Kirk Cousins is, So I think you can still build around this guy. I just worry about the peripheral pieces in terms of, they've got a raw head coach, they've got a raw general manager, all of these things that sort of, what's happening at cornerback, obviously you've got Harrison Smith, what's happening at, at end, what's happening, who's good, the center, that's all of these little things are a question mark for me. But I think part of the stability and part of the reason why they're going to be competitive is the fact they've got a top 12 quarterback in Kirk Cousins. And I think, if you're a Vikings fan, it's always great to think the grass is always greener on the other side. But, trust me, as a Dolphins fan, it's not always that way. We've got a quarterback for 20, 25 years. I think, you embrace the fact that you've got this guy who can win you football games. And he's good enough to do it with with a receiving core, with a running back, with an offensive line. That's going to develop as well with Darisaw and those guys. Brian O'Neill, obviously a really good unheralded right tackle, kid out of Pitt on the right side. So, I think Kirk Cousins is the reason to be cheerful.
I'm going to test Ollie's mettle here. I wondered if I should come to him again during the NFC North, during our NFC Positivity podcast. But, Ollie, give me a reason for the Bears to be cheerful going into 2022.
I've got so many. They've got a new orange helmet and a new orange jersey. Orange is my favourite colour. It's throwback. #KitWatch. They are a dreadful team. They are a dreadful, dreadful team. Asset stripping. They're positive. The positivity is that in 2023 they're going to be taking the number 1 pick. That's their positive.
It's absolutely brutal to a team that, Matt Eberflus comes in and shows that previously he works when he's got stars at every level. They've got Robert Quinn's come back, Roquan Smith's come back, Justin Fields. Many Bears fans believe that he's going to be a great player. I'm not expecting this team to be good this year by any stretch of the imagination, but they do feel like a team who, they are one of those who have that really ridiculous win-loss low, very low, like 3.5, 4.5 kind of set. And I don't know, are they that bad, Simon?
Yeah, I think they're the worst team in football. I think it's a really bad roster, and to be honest, it's hard to find that much hope. I was going to say Ryan Poles, the GM, gave hope, but actually drafted a kick returner in the 3rd round when Justin Fields was absolutely crying out for skill position talent. So really, the best I could do. I'm a big fan of Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator. So hopefully he can be a bit of a force for change. And you hope the scheme overcomes some pretty serious talent deficiencies. But I will say this to worried Bears fans, okay? Vince Lombardi started his career 1-1 in the preseason. Matt Eberflus is now 2-0. Take that for what you will. Take that for what you will. But it's a little nugget of hope.
I'm sorry, Bears fans. I tried. I did try. But I'm not going to... I'm sorry, Ollie, but I'm not going to keep focusing on this team while you are trying to ruin the rampant positivity podcast. And, the Detroit Lions. People are loving them. Right now, they are the kind of hot team, thanks in no small part to Hard Knocks, but a great offensive line. They improved the weapons. They've got a head coach that everyone loves to get behind. They only won 3.5 games last year, 3 games and a tie. Yeah, positivity-wise, there's no way that they're not looking at least up this year.
They've got 2 wins, at least, because they're playing the Bears twice. And they'll take a win off the Vikings. So they only need half a win now. What's that, a draw? A tie to
level last weekend.
To level to the classic Tory leveling up. That's exactly what they are. Hard Knocks has made them relevant. Because like that Taylor Swift song, I forgot they existed.
They play Washington and Seattle in the first 4 weeks. They could have 2 wins already come week 4. Hold
up. Are the Lions at... No. Look, they've got some interesting pieces. I like Jamal Williams. He seems like a real leader on Hard Knocks, and we've spoken to him, and they need leaders in a locker room which has got some young players. Aiden Hutchinson's going to be...
I like the receiving core as well. I'd like DJ Shark coming in and offering a bit more of a stretch of the field potential. And Amon-Ra St. Brown had an excellent second half to last season, showing out that he has number 1 upside potential. I'm not saying he's there yet, but he's got that potential there. DeAndre Swift's a great running back. Jared Goff is obviously the huge question mark, Simon, but improve everything around him and then go and get one of these young guys next year.
Yeah, I think it's all about the small steps. That, for me, is the positivity. I think Brad Holmes has done a decent job in the draft. I think Dan Campbell is absolutely the right man for the job, and I hope that he's given time to continue taking these small steps. 3.5 wins last year could go to 6 or 7 this year. And to me, that's, I don't think Detroit fans should necessarily be thinking about the playoffs, but I think, 6, 7 wins is an absolute possibility. And the team has got some core talent, some real core talent. Not enough, but it has some. Frank Ragnow, one of the best centers in the league. The offensive line generally is very good. Really good tackles in Decker and Peni Sewell, Logan Sternberg at guard. They're deep at running back with Swift and Justin Jackson. You mentioned the Williams kid at Green Bay. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a good receiver. TJ Hawkinson is a good tight end. Defensively, Aleem McNeil, on Wazariki, 2 young guys who should train on. Charles Harris, redemption story. Romeo Okwara, when he gets back healthy. The corners are, they've got Amani, the kid out of Penn State, whose second name I can never pronounce. Orowariki, Aiden Hutchinson, obviously, Jameson Williams in the draft, Malcolm Rodriguez, who's going to start a linebacker. I loved coming out. Chark, you mentioned. Can they keep taking the small steps? Can they show this progression? And then can you get these high draft picks like a Jeff Okudah in the secondary and Ifeatu Melifonwu? Can they start to come to the party as well? Jeff Okudah had a really good, quietly had a really good camp, was very good. Against did they practice against the Raiders last week? And I think Okudah played very well in the 2-day practices. If he can take a step up, all of a sudden this team is looking better and better and better. You can get to the pass, you can get to the quarterback internally with McNeil and Onwazurike. You can get outside with Harris and with Okwara. You've obviously got Aiden Hutchinson, who's going to play all 3 downs. Offensively, you can be diverse with the ball. You're going to have a deep threat with Chark. When Jameson Williams comes back, you're going to have a serious deep threat. You can go underneath with Hopkinson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. You've got Josh Reynolds, who's a good, solid player. So, there's some talent there. And I think these small steps that will take you to 7, 8 wins, I don't think is beyond the realms of possibility for Detroit.
I'm feeling that. I am absolutely feeling that. South or West? Go on, Ollie, you make the call. All right. NFC West it is, and we'll start off with the Los Angeles Rams, the reigning Super Bowl champions. It's difficult to go positivity with a team who obviously have just won the whole thing and say, well, you're going to go and win it again. But in a weaker NFC than AFC, there's no reason that with the talent on this team they can't do that. Big positive coming out of camp has apparently been Allen Robinson. Just finally, he gets a preseason working with a quarterback who knows what on earth they're doing. Second year with Matt Stafford, working with Sean McVay. The reports are that they've moved from previously with Jared Goff running just everything as simplified as possible, everything under center, to kind of going exactly the opposite last year with Matt Stafford to appeal to his skill set. And now they're trying to mix the two, a bit more of a blend, make it look more like the Sean McVay offense of old with the Stafford elements mixed in there. If Robinson looks as good as that, they'll probably end up signing Odell Beckham in November when he's back from that knee injury as well, to add that extra in there as well for very cheap. Yeah, they should be really good on offense. Left tackle, maybe a question mark. Pass rush, maybe a question mark. But I can't see a reason that this isn't a double-digit win team this season, Ollie.
No, you pretty much said it all, really. Yeah, you're right about the pass rush. They could have done with someone like Khalil Mack, who went to the other LA team. But
I know that they ignore the salary cap entirely in that part of Los Angeles, but I'm not sure they could have afforded that as well.
But I think the Allen Robinson thing is a real positivity, especially for him, because we've seen when a really talented player is in the wrong organization and they just kind of fade away, like Matt Stafford. As soon as they go to a proper organization with proper pieces around that are built for actually winning and want to win, then they flourish. And you could only imagine that's what Allen Robinson's going to do, especially when Cooper Kupp is being double covered elsewhere. You can't double cover both of them. So a huge benefit for that receiving core and for the offense in general to have Allen Robinson there.
I think there are question marks. I think you mentioned some of them, Will. Obviously, Stafford's elbow is a Stafford's elbow. Sounds like a kind of a place near Porth Call in Wales. Oh, hello, have you been to Stafford's elbow? I think, but I think Stafford's elbow is an issue. I think Joseph Noteboom obviously replacing Andrew Whitworth at left tackle. I think, the lack of pass rush and whether they're going to have to sort of falsely create pass rush, whether that's, linebackers like Ernest Jones blitzing, big responsibility on the shoulders of Leonard Floyd, obviously, guys like Ashawn Robinson, Ernest Brown, these kind of guys, obviously Bobby Wagner, if he can return to form. And I it's an interesting signing, but, Wagner fell off significantly last year. And people look at the tackle situation. I was speaking to Rob Stanton, who's a big Seahawks fan that we all know. And Rob was saying, the interior defensive line of Seattle was absolutely horrendous. It was the worst he can remember, almost historically, just a terrible line. And you look at Jordan Brooks and Wagner had so many tackles. Well, it was because, nobody on the defensive line could stop anybody. Yeah, for me, I think that the reason to be cheerful, there are lots of reasons to be cheerful when you're the Super Bowl champion. So I'm just going to throw a name out there, which is Lance McCutcheon. He's an undrafted free agent wide receiver from Montana State. He's absolutely blown up in camp. Sneaky speed. He's a contested catch winner. He's 6'3", 202 pounds. He's had 10 catches for 183 yards, 2 touchdowns in 2 preseason games. But actually, most of his damage has come against the first-team guys because he's had to start. He's been forced into starting because Cooper Kupp hasn't played a lot. Because obviously there's been a knee issue with Van Jefferson, and that injury could linger. I think he's going to be a factor in a team that doesn't necessarily need more weapons. But if he can turn into the sort of guy that Sean McVay, and McVay has been raving about this kid. He got the game ball and got to break down the team after the game the other night. He took Derek Stingley, the third overall pick of the Texans, to absolute town in the game against Houston the other night. So all he's done is show up, going against Jalen Ramsey in camp and holding his own. Look out for Lance McCutcheon to be an early name that people start talking about. You can just hear Chris Collinsworth talking about him in the broadcast. This guy, because he's a Collinsworth kind of guy in terms of his physicality and his his length and those sorts of things. So look out for Lance McCutcheon. Lots of reasons to be cheerful in LA, but this could be a little bonus reason.
Shall I do San Francisco? Should I let someone else do it?
No, you do it. Come on, be positive. Tell us why San Francisco are going to make the Super Bowl that I heard you say that they would do on another podcast.
If 3 key rookies turn preseason form and camp form into being decent starters, Sam Womack at nickel corner, who was so good in pre-season that they just cut Darquez Dennard before they even got down to the 85, let alone anywhere near the 53. Spencer Burford in at right guard, the fourth rounder, who has just looked unreal out of a small school, and
he was great at the Senior Bowl. I thought he was a really good pick.
As a interior line which has big question marks, probably the biggest question marks of anywhere on that 49ers team. That's big. And then Drake Jackson is a pure traits kind of guy, but he looked superb against the Vikings, both in the preseason game and in the camp meet-up between the two. If those three translate that, then this should be a team that should be talking about Super Bowl aspirations. Trey Lance is obviously the biggest question mark, but the 49ers had the second best yards per attempt in the NFL over the last 2 years with Jimmy Garoppolo under center. They've now got a guy that can throw it deep with accuracy and power. That excites the hell out of me. He's looked great in camp. He looked great in preseason games. Does that translate? Is it going to work? I don't know, but this is probably the most excited I've been as a 49ers fan going into a season, which, considering that there's a relative unknown starting at the most important position in sport, I guess speaks to positivity.
Yeah, I would say that Trey Lance. Yeah, I would say Lance comes out of an offense, a very, very run-heavy offense at North Dakota State. Threw the ball 322 times in his career. In his life. But he came out of a very, very, very run-heavy offense, and in Elijah Mitchell, Trey Sermon, Jeff Wilson, Tyrion Davis-Price, who I absolutely love, the kid out of LSU. Deebo Samuel, whether or not he's going to run the ball out of the backfield on jet sweeps, those sorts of things. You have a running game that is built to take pressure off the shoulders of Trey Lance, who, of course, has got great wheels himself. He is obviously going to have to throw the ball, but you are looking at Brandon Ayuk, Deebo,
Him and Ayuk have had the most unreal chemistry in camp as well.
Ray McCloud's had a really solid camp. Juwan Jennings, who's a good receiver. Danny Gray, the speedster out of SMU. Ross Dwelly, obviously, tight end. George Kittle, the best tight end in the NFL. If he can do that, then I think, this team could go a long way. I do worry a little bit about the secondary. I do worry a little bit about the corners. I do worry a bit about the interior of the offensive line. Great tackle with McGlinchey, Trent Williams. Like we talked about Spencer Burford. The center worries me. Left guard worries me a little bit. But, if Trey Lance can be the quarterback that the 49ers believe he can be, then, in a roughshod NFC East, they could go a long way.
You can't...
NFC, sorry, they could go a long way.
Is there any worry that Shanahan could Guardiola it in a final and overthink and
No, I don't think they're that good. I think they're a good team. I don't think that this is not an all-star team. You're essentially relying, as positive as Will has the absolute right to be, because the team is a good team and there's lots of good players. But you are essentially relying on a kid who played at the FCS level. Only started 16 games, was it? I think in his plus one in his senior season.
It's all right, because Lewis Riddick's comparing him to Pat Mahomes, so don't worry about it, guys. I mean, we're going to be fine.
He's only ever completed 208 passes in his life. Obviously that doesn't take in high school, but in terms of 3 years in college, he has completed 208 passes, and that is it. He is not used to throwing interceptions. He's only ever thrown one interception in his college career in 3 years. What's going to happen when inevitably, because this is the NFL, interceptions start piling up? How is he going to deal with those situations? Yes, Nick Bosa is great. Yes, Eric Armstead is great. Javon Kinlaw, an ascending player. Great special teams in terms of Robbie Gould being a great kicker. But there are, Jimmy Ward's a great player. If Talanoa Hufanga can stay healthy, that's a plus. But, I do have question marks that, I hoped Ambry Thomas would take a step up, and he kind of hasn't. Fred Warner obviously is a stud. Azeez Al-Shaair, one of the most underrated players in the NFC. But it's all kind of going to come together. And you just, you are putting all your eggs in the basket of a kid who's only ever completed 208 passes in his life. So that's a big question mark.
We need to pick up the pace a little bit. No offense to the teams that we've still got to go, but I'm going to come to one of you each on the next couple of teams. I'm not going to speak on either of these teams because I don't feel like it would be fair. Do I try and get Simon Clancy to say positive thing? Give me one positive for the Arizona Cardinals going into this year, Simon.
The positive thing for me for the Cardinals is that it can only be a matter of time before the Cliff Kingsbury experiment is over. I mean, he's never been above 500 in the second half of the season. Texas Tech 2014 started 3-4, finished 1-4. Texas Tech 2015 started 5-2, finished 2-4. 2016 started 3-4, finished 2-3. 2017 started 4-3, finished. You know where we're going, right? Last year started 7-0, finished 3-5. I mean, he is a disaster in the second half of the season because he runs such simplified high school offenses that teams can work out. So for me, the biggest plus is that the Cliff Kingsbury experiment will be overseen and they'll get a real head coach in.
I'd be minorly concerned if I was the Cardinals that it flips this season because of DeAndre Hopkins' availability and that they're better in the second half of the year and somehow they use that to justify, because of the massive length of contract they've given him and Steve Keim, to somehow keep him around another year. There's a lot to like about this Cardinals team from talent perspective, particularly obviously the quarterback. You know that I don't believe in the coaching staff either. This has been a long discussed topic. Hopefully that's something that they move on from. Seattle Seahawks, Ollie Hunter.
Oh man, it's a hospital past this, isn't it?
They're coming to London. They're coming to Germany, so that's exciting.
Oh yeah, okay. There's a positive. I get to see the Seattle Seahawks in Germany, in Munich. I'm going to Munich. There's a positive. They've got a really experienced Super Bowl winning head coach. That's a positive. They've managed to keep Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. That's a positive. I'm not sure there's much else that you can really be so positive about when it comes to the Seahawks, because they've lost that quarterback, their quarterback, the franchise quarterback that should have stayed. And it just looks really, really bleak when you've got Drew Lock and you're choosing between Drew Lock and Geno Smith.
On paper, they did have a good draft, though, Simon.
Yeah, I just throw in young pairs on the team. You go through that team, you look at the tackles, Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, studs. I think they'll be studs. Kenneth Walker, Rashad Penny at running back. Darryl Taylor and Boye Mafe at edge. You've got Jordan Brooks and Vi Jones at linebacker. And the two corners, the two rookies, Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant, have been spectacular in training camp, like properly spectacular. So there's some unheralded young players on this team. I don't think they're very good. I think they'll be in the mix for a quarterback next year. It might be Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll see how that plays out. And the sort of drama that will bring with the 49ers being in the same division. But there's some young talent and they come in pairs on that Seahawks team.
Right. NFC South. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know, there's so many odd conversations happening around this team at the moment, and it feels like there's been a lot of negativity out of camp when it's come to injuries, when it's come to Tom Brady's kind of disappearance, whether he's taking part in the Masked Singer or what, when it comes to just generally kind of looking at whether they're going to be able to carry on the high quality of the last couple of seasons. But I see so much still great young talent in that secondary, still so much great talent, in fact, on all sides of the ball, with the winningest quarterback in NFL history, I'm excited for Todd Bowles getting another opportunity and getting to prove himself. This is another team who, I just said this about kind of San Francisco and LA, but this is a team who should be looking at Arizona in February and saying that that's somewhere we should be targeting.
Yeah, to me, the positivity note is the fact that Eric Fisher, Nate Solder, JC Tretter, Eric Flowers, Darrell Williams, Oday Abouche, a veteran free agent lineman who are still out there on the street because the injuries they've had. You know, Adam Stinney, the latest to go down with a torn ACL. They've obviously lost. They obviously lost Ryan Jensen with a torn ACL. They lost the other guy. Ali Marpet retired. Kappa went to the Jets. Tristan Wirfs is struggling with injury. So there's plenty of really good veteran linemen out there because you're going to need that to protect your 46-year-old quarterback.
You really do. But they've managed to retain most of their skill position guys. And those are the guys that have done well over the last 2 or 3 years. So Mike Evans still being there is absolutely massive. And some of the... you mentioned the young players, Will, but some of the older players to help them come through is key. And the fact that they've retained quite a few of them, on both sides of the ball, is really huge.
We said this on a previous podcast, but it's a real shame with Russell Gage being out as he is at the moment. I hope he comes back quick because I fully expect him to be the third receiver there, if not the second receiver. I think he's great, and I don't understand why Julio Jones was even a particular consideration for them, but it's a very easily cuttable deal. If he turns out to be the Julio Jones not of last year, of anything like in
that we
Atlanta.
all know and don't love.
Ollie, I'm just going to let you pick which of the other NFC South teams you want to go on.
I'm going to go the Falcons. And I'm really excited and really positive to see their all-red uniform. Hashtag Kitwatch.
Christ.
That's why I'm back, surely. That's the only reason I can only imagine. No, I think they've got to be positive in the fact that they've got this year, and we will truly see it. Well, maybe not with Marcus Mariota under centre, but in Kyle Pitts, I think one of the most exciting receiving options in the league. If he was a wide receiver, there could be a conversation of him being a top 10 wide receiver in the league. I think he's a really exciting player, and that's one of the quite few positives in a very, as you said, weak NFC and a very weak NFC South. Maybe the NFC South might end up being the NFC disgrace again.
They've got some exciting young pieces.
I think they've got a quad box of 4 youngsters on offense. Desmond Ridder, Tyler Algier, the running back, Drake London and Kyle Pitts, the tight end, that could start their swinging fortunes. And if Ridder can continue this strong start that he's had, I think it allows him to focus on one of the elite defensive players like Will Anderson in the draft next year, rather than using a high one on a quarterback. So for me, a bit like in Washington, you've got these young players that if they fit together, it could be, have a nice little plateau for them to build on. I thought he was an excellent offensive coordinator in Tennessee. I thought him and Ryan Tannehill gelled really well together. So I think he and Ridder could work well together, because Ridder has a very similar skill set in terms of his ability to get out of the pocket and make plays on the run.
Carolina, your reason to be cheerful more than any other is that in week 1 you will be America's team. Having Baker Mayfield going up against the Browns, there will be no neutral who will not be rooting for the Carolina Panthers in week 1. Surely. Yeah. Surely. Even Browns fans should be rooting for the Panthers in week 1.
I mean, I can't wait for week 11 when we hope that one of those good old Houston defenders takes out Watson's knee. But yes, I'm 100% behind you. I think actually, though, if the defensive unit can play up to the sum of its parts, I mean, they've got quality at all 3 levels. If you look at, Brian Burns and Derek Brown and Nixon and Yetur Gross-Matos and Shaq Thompson, and that secondary is really good. JC Horn and Jeremy Chin and CJ Henderson and Deion Jackson and Kalen Barnes, the rookie, Keith Taylor out of Washington, Xavier Woods, who they got from Dallas, then I think that's going to keep them in games. The offense isn't very good. But I think Baker just brings a little bit of a spark, and I think it'll be good for Baker Mayfield. I think that might just rejuvenate him a little bit, because there were times in Cleveland, and a lot of times in Cleveland, where you thought, he's the guy, and it went sour towards the end, and the injuries didn't help. But if he's healthy, I think it could be. But beat Cleveland in week 1, please.
I've I've long held this, that Baker Mayfield is a starting quarterback in the NFL, and I don't know why people have lost sight that he can be that at the right team. Whether Carolina's the right team or not, I don't know. But people treating him like he's a low-level backup and got a half-decent contract, so we don't want to sign him, seem bizarre. There are a lot of other teams, like Seattle, who could really have done with Baker Mayfield this offseason. It doesn't surprise me that he has waltzed over Sam Darnold in that camp. Big question mark is going to be just seeing what Matt Rule does this year and how long he's in town for. I could imagine it being a mid-season separation, potentially, if it doesn't go his way. So our final team is the New Orleans Saints. 9-8 last season. Dennis Allen's first year as coach, but he has retained a huge amount of the coaching staff there. If you ask in the building, with Tyrann Mathieu being added to the team, there's belief that that defense can be absolutely at least a top 5 defense, if not the best in the NFL. And honestly, the offensive weapons, if Michael Thomas is healthy, if Alvin Kamara is healthy, and if Chris Olave is anywhere near as good as he could be, I think there's plenty of reason to be excited for the Saints, Simon.
Yeah, I think you talked about it, young players on defense to me at all 3 levels. You look at Peyton Turner as a sidekick to Marcus Davenport. Turner, obviously the first round pick last year, had 1.5 sacks he needs to train on. Pete Werner, really underrated last year. I think had a really good rookie year. The sort of sidekick to Demario Davis. And then Paulson Adebo, who's been the star of training camp, cornerback out of Stanford. He's really long. The sidekick to Marshawn Lattimore in a really good secondary, which will also have CJ Gardner-Johnson at the nickel, Tyrann Mathieu in the nickel, and also at safety, and then Marcus May was really good for the Jets. So, yeah, I think to me, it's young players on all 3 levels of the defense.
Yeah, I utterly concur. They've also got a new black helmet, which looks incredible. So they're going to look even sleeker. One of the best uniforms in the NFL is going to get even better with a fresh new black helmet. But I think it's actually positive that they've got a new direction. Things can be stale if you're somewhere for too long. I know that, having changed jobs recently. So when you've got new direction
Shots fired, right?
and a new focus, when you've got a new direction and a new focus, it always comes back to me. Don't you worry about that, Simon. That the New Orleans Saints have. Look, Sean Payton was brilliant for the organization and a brilliant coach, and he'll do well wherever he goes. But new life and a new direction could be really, really good for this New Orleans Saints team.
Positivity. We did it, guys. It felt more negative than the AFC podcast. But it's fine.
A far worse division.
Yeah, it's a far worse conference. You're not wrong.
Sorry, yeah. Well, all the divisions are far worse.
Hey, Ollie.
Yes.
I haven't said this for a while. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I find that, don't you think the Cleveland Browns, there was a guy, I played football yesterday, and a guy on our team went up for a header and he fell on his wrist and you could hear it break and he broke his wrist. And I just had to walk away because I'm really not good with these things. That's how I feel about the Browns. I don't even want to look at them. I don't even want to acknowledge them, really. They feel a bit icky. I don't know whether anyone else feels like about the Cleveland Browns because of the Deshaun Watson situation. I know you've probably all had your say about it already, but I haven't, and it all just feels wrong. I don't like it, and I don't even want to acknowledge it and look at it. Although I know that it's just bad.
And yet you're the one that brought it up.
That's a very good point. Wait a second.
Thank you very much for listening and watching. Get in touch with your thoughts on all the stuff we've talked about at Gridiron on Twitter, at UK Gridiron on Instagram. We are doing some Madden 23 giveaways on there as well. I downloaded and started playing it yesterday for the first time and absolutely loving it. So get involved in those competitions as well. Get the magazine. First one out pretty soon, Simon?
I believe so. Very.
If you're watching visually, the Gridiron magazine, the preview, it's still really, really good. It's not out of date. It's magnificent. So,
lovely stuff. Gents, thank you so much for listening. This has been The Gridiron Show.